In the play Justice, the author John Galsworthy uses a satirical tone to criticize the judicial system for giving the upper class a free hand to commit crimes while putting the poor in solitary confinement for minor illegal acts. In Act 3, we saw the scene in prison. Folder was sentenced to 3 years penal servitude. Coxon visited Folder's prison asking if Ruth might be allowed to see prisoner but received no sympathy. Let's start Act 4. The scene is again Coxon's room at a few minutes to 10 of a March morning 2 years later. The doors are all open. Sweedle, now blessed with a sprouting moustache, is getting the offices ready. He arranges papers on Coxon's table, then goes to a covered washstand, raises the lid, and looks at himself in the mirror. While he is gauging his fill, Ruth Honeywell comes in through the outer office and stands in the doorway. There seems a kind of exultation and excitement behind her habitual impassivity. Sweedle, suddenly seeing her and dropping the lid of the washstand with a bang. Hello, it's you. Ruth, yes. Sweedle, there is only me here. They don't waste their time hurrying down in the morning. Why, it must be 2 years since we had the pleasure of seeing you. What have you been doing with yourself? Ruth, living. Sweedle, if you want to see him, he points to Coxon's chair. He will be here directly. Never misses. Not much. I hope our friend is back from the country. His time has been up these 3 months, if I remember. Ruth nods. I was awful sorry about that. The governor made a mistake, if you ask me. Ruth, he did. Sweedle, he ought to have given him a chance, and I say, the judge ought to have let him go after that. They have forgot what human nature is like. Ruth gives him a honeyed smile. Sweedle, they come down on you like a cartload of bricks, flatten you out, and when you don't swell up again, they complain of it. I know them, seen a lot of that sort of thing in my time. He shakes his head in the plenitude of wisdom. Why, only the other day the governor. But Coxon has come in through the outer office, brisk with east wind and decidedly grayer. Coxon, drawing off his coat and gloves. Why, it's you? Then motioning Sweedle out and closing the door. Quite a stranger. Must be 2 years. Do you want to see me? I can give you a minute. Sit down. Family well? Ruth, yes. I'm not living where I was. Coxon, I hope things are more comfortable at home. Ruth, I couldn't stay with Honeywell after all. Coxon, you haven't done anything rash, I hope. I should be sorry if you had done anything rash. Ruth, I have kept the children with me. Coxon, beginning to feel that things are not so jolly as he had hoped. Well, I am glad to have seen you. You have not heard from the young man, I suppose, since he came out. Ruth, yes, I ran across him yesterday. Coxon, I hope he is well. Ruth, with sudden fierceness, I can't get anything to do. It's dreadful to see him. He is just skin and bone. Coxon, with genuine concern, dear me, I am sorry to hear that. Didn't they find him a place when his time was up? Ruth, he was only there 3 weeks. It got out. Coxon, I'm sure I don't know what I can do for you. I don't like to be snobby. Ruth, I can't bear his being like that. Coxon, I know his relations are not very forthy about him. Perhaps you can do something for him till he finds his feet. Ruth, not now. I could have, but not now. Cookson, I don't understand. Ruth, I have seen him again. That's all over. Cookson, staring at her disturbed. I'm a family man. I don't want to hear anything unpleasant. Excuse me, I'm very busy. Ruth, I have I had have gone home to my people in the country long ago, but they have never got over me marrying Honeywell. I never was wise, Mr. Coxon, but I am proud. I was only a girl, you see, when I married him. I thought the world of him, of course. He used to come traveling to our farm. Coxon, I did hope you had have got on better after you saw me. Ruth. He used me worse than ever. He couldn't break my nerve, but I lost my health. And then he began knocking the children about. I couldn't stand that. I wouldn't go back now if he were dying. Coxon, who has risen who has risen and is shifting about as though dogging a stream of lava. We must not be violent, must we? Ruth, a man that can't behave better than that. Coxon, fascinated in spite of himself. Then there you were, and what did you do then? Ruth, tried the same as when I left him before, making such cheap things. It was the best I could get, but I never made more than 10 shillings a week buying my own cotton and working all day. I hardly ever got to bed till past 12. I kept at it for 9 months. Well, I'm not fit for that. I wasn't made for it. I would rather die. Cookson, my dear woman, we must not talk like that. Ruth, it was starvation for the children too. After what they had always had, I soon got not to care. I used to be too tired. She is silent. Coxon, with fearful curiosity. And what happened then? Ruth, my employer happened then. He has happened ever since. Coxon, dear, oh dear, I never came across a thing like this. Ruth, he has treated me all right, but I have done with that. Suddenly her lips begin to quiver and she hides them with the back of her hand. I never thought I had see him again. You see, it was just a chance I met him by Hyde Park. We went in there and sat down, and he told me all about himself. Oh, Mr. Coxon, give him another chance. Coxon, then you have both lost your livings. What a horrible position. Ruth, if he could only get here where there is nothing to find out about him. Coxon, we can't have anything derogative to the farm. Ruth, I have no one else to go to. Coxon, I will speak to the partners, but I don't think they will take him. Under the circumstances, I don't really. Ruth, he came with me. He is down there in the street. Coxon, he shouldn't have done that until he has sent for. Then softening at the look on her face. We have got a vacancy as it happens, but I can't promise anything. Ruth, it would be the saving of him. Coxon, well, I will do what I can, but I'm not sanguine. Now tell him that I don't want him here till I see how things are. Leave your address. 83 Malinger Street. He notes it on blotting paper. Good morning. Ruth, thank you. She moves towards the door, turns as if to speak but does not, and goes away. Coxon, wiping his head and forehead with a large white cotton handkerchief. What a business. Then looking amongst his papers, he sounds his bell. Sweedle answers it. Coxon. Was that young Richards coming here today after the clerk's place? Swindle. Yes. Coxon. Well, keep him in the air. I don't want to see him yet. Swindle. What shall I tell him, sir? Coxon. Invent something. Use your brains. Don't stamp him off altogether. Swindle. Shall I tell him that we have got illness, sir? Coxon. No, nothing untrue. Say I am not here today. Swindle. Yes, sir. Keep him hankering? Coxon. Exactly. And look here. You remember Folder? I may be having him round to see me. Now treat him like you had have him treat you in a similar position. Swindle. I naturally should do. Coxon. That's right. When a band is down, never hit him. That's not necessary. Give him a hand up. That is a metaphor I recommend to you in life. It's sound policy. Swindle. Do you think the governors will take him on again, sir? Coxon. Can't say anything about that. At the sound of someone having entered the outer office. Who is there? Swindle. Going to the door and looking. It's Folder, sir. Coxon. Dear me, that's very naughty of her. Tell him to call again. I don't want. He breaks off as Folder comes in. Folder is thin, pale, older. His eyes have grown more restless. His clothes are very worn and loose. Swindle, nodding cheerfully, withdraws. Coxon. Glad to see you. You are rather previous, trying to keep things pleasant. Shake hands. She has striking while the iron is hot. He wipes his forehead. I don't blame her. She is anxious. Folder timidly takes Coxon's hand and glances towards the partner's door. Coxon. No, not yet. Sit down. Folder sits in the chair at the side of Coxon's table on which he places his cap. Now you are here, I would like you to give me a little account of yourself. Looking at him over his spectacles. How is your health? Folder. I am alive, Mr. Coxon. Coxon. I am glad to hear that. About this matter, I don't like doing anything out of ordinary. It's not my habit. I am a plain man. I want everything smooth and straight. But I promised your friend to speak to the partners and I always keep my word. Folder. I just want a chance, Mr. Coxon. I have paid for that job 1,000 times and more. I have, sir. No one knows. They say I weighed more when I came out than when I went in. They couldn't weigh me here. He touches his head. Or here. He touches his heart and gives a sort of laugh. Till last night I had thought there was nothing in here at all. Coxon. You have not got heart disease? Folder. Oh, they passed me sound enough. Coxon. But they got you a place, didn't they? Folder. Yes, very good people. Knew all about it. Very kind to me. I thought I was going to get on first rate. But one day, all of a sudden, the other clerks got wind of it. I couldn't stick it, Mr. Coxon. I couldn't, sir. Coxon. Easy, my dear fellow, easy. Folder. I had one small job after that, but it didn't last. Coxon. How was that? Folder. It's no good deceiving you, Mr. Coxon. The fact is, I seem to be struggling against a thing that is all round me. I can't explain it. It's as if I was in a net. As fast as I cut it here, it grows up there. I didn't act as I ought to have about references. But what are you to do? You must have them. And that made me afraid, and I left. In fact, I'm afraid all the time now. He bows his head and leans dejectedly silent over the table. Coxon. I feel for you. I do really. Are not your sisters going to do anything for you? Folder. One is in consumption and the other. Coxon. Yes. She told me her husband wasn't quite pleased with you. Folder. When I went there, they were at supper. My sister wanted to give me a kiss, I know. But he just looked at her and said, "What have you come for?" Well, I pocketed my pride and I said, "Are not you going to give me your hand, Jim?" "She is, I know," I said. "Look here," he said. "That's all very well, but we had better come to an understanding. I have been expecting you and I have made up my mind. I will give you £25 to go to Canada with." "I see," I said. "Good riddance." "No, thanks. Keep your £25. Friendship is a queer thing when you have been where I have." Coxon. "I understand. Will you take the £25 from me?" Flustered as Folder regards him with a queer smile, quite without prejudice. "I meant it kindly." Folder. "They wouldn't let me in." Coxon. "Oh, no. You are not looking the thing." Folder. "I have slept in the park 3 nights this week. The dawns are not all poetry there. But meeting her, I feel a different man this morning. I have often thought the being fond of her is the best thing about me. It's sacred somehow, and yet it did for me. That's queer, isn't it?" Coxon. "I'm sure we are all very sorry for you." Folder. "That's what I have found, Mr. Coxon. Awfully sorry for me. With quite bitterness. But it doesn't do to associate with criminals." Coxon. "Come, come. It's no use calling yourself names. That never did a man any good. Put a face on it." Folder. "It's easy enough to put a face on it, sir, when you are independent. Try it when you are down like me. They talk about giving you your dessert. Well, I think I have had just a bit over." Coxon. "I hope they haven't made a socialist of you." Folder is suddenly still, as if brooding over his past self. He utters a peculiar laugh. Coxon. "You must give them credit for the best intentions. Really, you must. Nobody wishes you harm, I am sure." Folder. "I believe that, Mr. Coxon. Nobody wishes you harm, but they down you all the same." This feeling, he stares round him as though at something closing in. "It's crushing me. I know it is." Coxon. "There is nothing there. We must try and take it quiet. I am sure I have often had you in my prayers. Now leave it to me. I will use my gumption and take them when they are jolly." As he speaks, the two partners come in. Coxon. Rather disconcerted but trying to put them all at ease. "I didn't expect you quite so soon. I have just been having a talk with this young man. I think you will remember him." James, with a grave, keen look. "Quite well. How are you, Walter?" Walter, holding out his hand almost timidly. "Very glad to see you again, Walter." Walter, who has recovered his self control, takes the hand. "Thank you, sir." Coxon. "Just a word, Mr. James." To Folder, pointing to the clerk's office. "You might go in there a minute. You know your way. Our junior won't be coming this morning. His wife has just had a little family." Folder goes uncertainly out into the clerk's office. Coxon, confidentially. "I'm bound to tell you all about it. He is quite penitent, but there is a prejudice against him. And you are not seeing him to advantage this morning. He is undernourished. It is very trying to go without your dinner. James, is that so, Coxon? Coxon, I wanted to ask you. He has had his lesson. Now we know all about him, and we want a clerk. There is a young fellow applying, but I am keeping him in the air. James, a gaul bird in the office, Coxon? I don't see it. Walter, the rolling of the chariot wheels of justice. I have never got that out of my head. James, I have nothing to reproach myself with in this affair. What has he been doing since he came out? Coxon, he has had one or two places, but he has not kept them. He is sensitive, quite natural. Seems so fancy everybody's down on him. James, bad sign. Don't like the fellow. Never did from the first. Weak character is written all over him. Walter, I think we owe him a leg up. James, he brought it all on himself. Walter, the doctrine of full responsibility does not quite hold in these days. James, rather grimly, you will find it safer to hold it for all that, my boy. Walter, for oneself, yes, not for other people. Thanks. James, well, I don't want to be hard. Coxon, I am glad to hear you say that. He seems to see something, spreading his arms round him. That isn't healthy. James, what about that woman he was mixed up with? I saw someone uncommonly like her outside as we came in. Coxon, that, well, I can't keep anything from you. He has met her. James, is she with her husband? Coxon, no. James, Folder living with her, I suppose. Coxon, desperately trying to retain the newfound jollity. I don't know that of my own knowledge. That isn't my business. James, it is our business if we are going to engage him, Coxon. Coxon, reluctantly, I ought to tell you perhaps. I have had the party here this morning. James, I thought so. To Walter, no, my dear boy, it won't do. Too saddy altogether. Coxon, the two things together make it very awkward for you. I see that. Walter, tentatively, I don't quite know what we have to do with his private life. James, no, no, he must make a clean sheet of it, or he can't come here. Walter, poor devil. Coxon, will you have him in? And as James nods, I think I can get him to see reason. James, you can leave that to me, Coxon. Walter, to James in a low voice while Coxon is summoning Folder. His whole future may depend on what we do, Dad. Folder comes in. He has pulled himself together and presents a steady front. James, now look here, Folder, my son, and I want to give you another chance. But there are two things I must say to you. In the first place, it is no good coming here as a victim. If you have any notion that you have been unjustly treated, get rid of it. You can't play fast and lose with morality and hope to go scot free. If society did not take care of itself, nobody would. The sooner you realize that, the better. Folder, yes, sir. But may I say something? James, well, I had a lot of time to think it over in prison. He stops. Coxon, encouraging him. I'm sure you did. Folder, there were all sorts there. And what I mean, sir, is that if we had been treated differently the first time and put under somebody that could look after us a bit and not put in prison, not a quarter of us would ever have got there. James, I am afraid I have very grave doubts of that. Folder, with a gleam of malice. Yes, sir, so I found. James, my good fellow, don't forget that you began it. Falter, I never wanted to do wrong. James, perhaps not, but you did. Falter, with all the bitterness of his past suffering. It's knocked me out of time. That is, I mean, I'm not what I was. James, this is not encouraging for us, Falter. Coxon, he is putting it awkwardly, Mr. James. Folder, throwing over his caution from the intensity of his feeling. I mean it, Mr. Coxon. James, now lay aside all those thoughts, Folder, and look to the future. Folder, yes, sir, but you don't understand what prison is. It's here it gets you. He grips his chest. Coxon, in a whisper to James, I told you he wanted nourishment. Walter, yes, but my dear fellow, that will pass away. Time is merciful. Folder, I hope so, sir. James, now, my boy, what you have got to do is to put all the past behind you and build yourself up a steady reputation. And that brings me to the second thing. This woman you were mixed up with, you must give us your word, you know, to have done with that. There is no chance of your keeping straight if you are going to begin your future with such a relationship. Folder, looking from one to the other with a hunted expression. But sir, it's the one thing I looked forward to all that time. And see too, I couldn't find her before last night. During this, and what follows, Coxon becomes more and more uneasy. James, this is painful, Folder, but you must see for yourself that it's impossible for a firm like this to close its eyes to everything. Give us this proof of your resolve to keep straight, and you can come back, not otherwise. Folder, after staring at James, suddenly stiffens himself. I couldn't give her up. I couldn't. Oh, sir, I am all she has got to look to. And I'm sure she has all I have got. James, I'm very sorry, Folder, but I must be firm. It's for the benefit of you both in the long run. No good can come of this connection. It was the cause of all your disaster. Folder, but sir, it means having gone through all that, getting broken up. My nerves are in an awful state for nothing. I did it for her. James, come. If she has anything of a woman, she will see it for herself. She won't want to drag you down further. If there were a prospect of your being able to marry her, it might be another thing. Folder, It's not my fault, sir, that she couldn't get rid of him. She would have if she could. That has been the whole trouble from the beginning. Looking suddenly at Walter, if anybody would help her, it is only money wanted now, I'm sure. Coxon, breaking in as Walter hesitates and is about to speak. I don't think we need consider that. It's rather far-fetched. Folder to Walter appealing. He must have given her full cause since she could prove that he drove her to leave him. Walter, I am inclined to do what you say, Folder, if it can be managed. Folder, oh sir. He goes to the window and looks down into the street. Coxon, you don't take me, Mr. Walter. I have my reasons. Folder, she is down there, sir. Will you see her? I can beckon to her from here. Walter hesitates and looks from Coxon to James. James, yes, let her come. Folder beckons from the window. Coxon, in a low fluster to James and Walter. No, Mr. James. She has not been quite what she ought to have been while this young man has been away. She has lost her chance. We can't consult how to swindle the law. Folder has come from the window. The three men look at him in a sort of odd silence. Folder, with instinctive apprehension of some change, looking from one to the other. There has been nothing between us, sir, to prevent it. What I said at the trial was true. And last night we only just sat in the park. Swidel comes in from the outer office. Coxon, what is it? Swidel, Mrs. Honeywell. James, show her in. Ruth comes slowly in and stands stoically with Folder on one side and the three men on the other. No one speaks. Coxon turns to his table, bending over his papers as though the burden of the situation were forcing him back into his accustomed groove. James, shut the door there. Swidel shuts the door. We have asked you to come up because there are certain facts to be faced in this matter. I understand you have only just met Folder again. Ruth, yes, only yesterday. James, he has told us about himself and we are very sorry for him. I have promised to take him back here if he will make a fresh start. This is a matter that requires courage, ma'am. Ruth, who is looking at Folder, begins to twist her hands in front of her as though prescient of disaster. Folder, Mr. Walter Howe is good enough to say that he will help us to get a divorce. Ruth flashes a startled glance at James and Walter. James, I don't think that is practicable, Folder. Folder, but sir. James, now Mrs. Honeywell, you are fond of him. Ruth, yes sir, I love him. She looks miserably at Folder. James, then you don't want to stand in his way, do you? Ruth, in a faint voice, I could take care of him. James, the best way you can take care of him will be to give him up. Folder, nothing shall make me give you up. You can get a divorce. There has been nothing between us, has there? Ruth, mournfully shaking her head without looking at him. No. Folder, we will keep apart till it's over, sir. If you will only help us, we promise. James, you see the thing plainly, don't you? You see what I mean? Ruth, yes. Coxon, to himself. There is a dear woman. James, the situation is impossible. Ruth, must I, sir? James, I put it to you, ma'am. His future is in your hands. Ruth, I want to do the best for him. James, that's right, that's right. Folder, I don't understand. You are not going to give me up after all this. There is something staring forward to James. Sir, I swear solemnly there has been nothing between us. James, I believe you, Folder. Come, my lad, be as plucky as she is. Folder, just now you were going to help us. He stares at Ruth, who is standing absolutely still. His face and hands twist and quiver as the truth dawns on him. What is it? You have not been. Walter, father. James, there. That will do, that will do. I will give you your chance, Folder. Don't let me know what you do with yourselves. That's all. Folder. Ruth. Ruth looks at him, and Folder covers his face with his hands. There is silence. Coxon. The other door, the other door. Wister opens the clerk's door. Ruth's voice is heard. Oh, do. And Folder's. I can't. There is a little pause. Then, with sharp fright, Ruth says, who is that? Wister has gone in. The three men look aghast at the door. Wister, keep back, please. He comes swiftly out with his arm twisted in Folder's. The latter gives a white, staring look at the three men. Walter, let him go this time, for God's sake. Wister, I couldn't take the responsibility, sir. Folder, with a queer, desperate laugh. Good. Flinging a look back at Ruth, he throws up his head and goes out through the outer office, half dragging Wister after him. Walter, with despair, that finishes him. It will go on forever now. Sweedle can be seen staring through the outer door. There are sounds of footsteps descending the stone stairs. Suddenly, a dull thud, a faint, my God, in Wister's voice. James, what's that? Sweedle dashes forward. The door swings to behind him. There is dead silence. Walter, staring forward to the inner room. The woman, she is fainting. He and Coxon support the fainting Ruth from the doorway of the clerk's room. Coxon, here, my dear, there. Walter, have you any brandy? Coxon, I have got sherry. Walter, get it then, quick. He places Ruth in a chair which James has dragged forward. Coxon, here, it's good strong sherry. They try to force the sherry between her lips. There is the sound of feet, and they stop to listen. The outer door is reopened. Wister and Sweedle are seen carrying some burden. James, what is it? They lay the burden down in the outer office, out of sight, and all but Ruth cluster round it, speaking in hushed voices. Wister, he jumped, necks broken. Walter, good God. Wister, he must have been mad to think he could give me the slip like that. And what was it? Just a few months. Walter, was that all? James, what a desperate thing. Then, in a voice unlike his own, run for a doctor, you. Sweedle rushes from the outer office. An ambulance. Wister goes out. On Ruth's